welcome back. Today we're going to be making one of my favorite recipes, oxtail soup. I actually developed this recipe about 4 years ago, I think, whenever Josh and I got our first place together. And it's kind of evolved over time. It's now one of his favorite things that I make, and so I'm really excited to share this with you guys. Oxtail is sometimes not the most typical thing you see in a grocery store, so if you can't find it or if it freaks you out, you can absolutely go and sub it with beef shank or some sort of fatty pork or pretty much anything that's got a bone. The big thing about this broth is that you cook it for a really long time, so that way you get all that collagen and deliciousness from the bones. Oxtail is like one of those like leftover meats that people had to get creative with back in the day in order to make it taste good, and now it's kind of a delicacy in a lot of restaurants, and you can make a lot of really cool things with it. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and drop a comment letting me know what you want me to make next time. Also, I want to just get a gauge from you guys, like, how do you feel about oxtail? Does it freak you out? Are you into it? Is it something you're interested in exploring? Like, I'm interested. Anyway, let's get cooking.
One of the many things that I love about this soup is you don't really need to chop a lot of stuff. So we're gonna get right down to it, starting with some lemongrass. I'm gonna remove the first outer layers just because they're pretty coarse and don't really do anything for me. And then I'm gonna chop up the tops and the little rough bottom nub thing. What do you call that? I don't know. Anyway, so we're gonna cut those off because I don't need them. And then we're gonna cut it into more manageable pieces. Now, I love lemongrass and think it's one of the most underrated elements in the vegetable kingdom. It's got an awesome aromatic element to it, adds a little bit of tang, but isn't too citrusy like lime or lemon. It's just amazing. So to help it more easily incorporate into our soup, we're gonna rough it up a little bit by hitting it with our knife and then just giving it a twist here and there. Now, my camera decided to cut out here, but trust me when I say that I cut these tomatoes in half. You should too. It'll help it easily dissolve into our soup. Now onto some spice. We are going to be using whatever pepper you would like. I mean, ideally you'd want something to pack some heat, so like a red bell pepper would be pretty lame, but in my case, I'm using a serrano because I couldn't get my hands on some Thai chilies. Basically, choose your own adventure. Next up, we're going to be chopping our onion, and I know you're about to get mad at me saying, Gabby, you said there's not a lot of chopping. Don't worry, friend, we're just lobbing it into some really rough chunks. I'm serious. This is not supposed to be diced. We don't have to get fancy. You really don't even really have to take off the butt of the onion if you don't want. It's up to you. This is basically just gonna act as a flavoring element to the broth of our soup. And speaking of flavor, let's grab our good friend, Mr. Ginger. So we're gonna cut off a 3-inch nub. I don't know, what do you call that? Nub, let's go with that. If you guys have watched any of my other videos, you're probably familiar with this trick by now, but I like to use a spoon to remove the skin of my ginger. Do not panic that you see me cutting this. We're literally done. That's it. All we're doing is cutting this into slices so it can flavor our broth. Regarding our oxtail, you are absolutely allowed to trim the fat, but I find this tedious and annoying, and I actually know a shortcut that I will share with you later. We're going to throw these babies into a dry pan with no oil because it's got enough fat to do the job. And what we're gonna do is just get a nice char on all the sides so that way it imparts an awesome flavor, not just to the meat, but also to the bottom of the pan. We're gonna throw in our tomatoes and then we're gonna add in all of our other vegetables. In goes our onion, followed by our secret weapon, our lemongrass that's been beaten and bruised appropriately. And then we're gonna top it off with our sliced ginger and pepper of choice. These are gonna start excreting a little liquid that will allow us to scrape those brown bits on the bottom of the pan. Then 1 stick of cinnamon, 4 stars of star anise or anise, and then 3 cloves. In a perfect world, I would have whole cardamom, but it's not perfect, so I'm just going to be making do with some ground stuff that I've got in my pantry. Then give it a good mix to allow the spices to bloom, and then top her all off with about 2 tablespoons of fish sauce and 1/3 cup of soy sauce, and then topping her off with 6 cups of water. We're gonna just incorporate everything by giving it a very rough poke and mix, which really doesn't do anything, but makes me feel good about myself. And then we're gonna bring her up to a roaring boil like so. Once we've achieved that boil, we're going to just reduce the heat, mix everything up, and that's pretty much it. We're just gonna stew this for about 3 hours to allow the oxtail to tenderize, otherwise it's gonna be a little bit too tough. And then occasionally giving it a stir and removing any scuzz at the top. The formal definition of scuzz is weird foamy things that appear at the top of soup when cooked with bones. And it's not harmful, it just doesn't look pretty. So once the meat starts falling off the bone, you know that you are ready. So we're gonna just pull that out and put it in a bowl off to the side so that we can pull it apart later. Then we're gonna take our broth and a colander of some sort. I'm actually gonna be using cheesecloth, and we're going to be straining all of that gobbledygook that we have, and so we are left with a beautiful, clear, and flavorful broth. I am a crazy person, so I wring everything out so I get every last drop of deliciousness, but you know, whatever you want. If you want to waste a couple of drops, I won't blame you for not burning your hands. Now that all of our flavoring agents have been properly extracted, we're going to put our beautiful broth into the fridge covered with aluminum foil. Meanwhile, it's time to remove all of the meat from our bones. And the thing about oxtail is that it's about 20% meat, 80% fat. This is the curse of working with oxtail, but I promise you the flavor makes it absolutely worth it. And to be completely honest, I find this part weirdly satisfying. But I'm not gonna bore you with the details because it took me probably about a good 15 minutes, and that's longer than the length of my video. So after everything is said and done, I am left with not a ton of meat, as you can see. I mean, it's a good amount and it'll make just enough for my soup, but honestly, the big feature of this soup is going to be the broth. This little baby right here has been in the fridge for a couple of hours, and as you can see, all of the fat has solidified at the top. It looks kind of like a frozen lake. So we're gonna take a spoon and just scrape off the fat layer and pull it off to the side. This is again one of those things that is weird and gross, but again, strangely satisfying to do. The nice thing about this too is it doesn't require you to trim the fat before you cook it, and you get every single ounce of it out. Do not be alarmed by the wiggle and jiggle of our broth. This is essentially what the modern day trendy gurus call a bone broth, and it's basically just packed with collagen and all the delicious things from the bones. Now it's time to assemble our dish. I've got a little tiny bed of rice topped with a little bit of oxtail meat. I'm adding a little bit of shredded purple cabbage because I need some vegetables in my life, and I've heated up our broth so it is piping hot and no longer gelatinous. We have a lot of savory elements going on here, so I'm gonna brighten up the soup by adding a hit of acid and squeezing some lime into this situation. And now let's go to town with some herbs. I've got some cilantro that I'm gonna put in the corner so that it looks pretty for that photograph that I'm going to fuss over. And then I'm gonna also top it off with some sliced scallions, which I cut at an angle to make them look extra fancy. And if you can find it, I love adding a little bit of Thai basil. This is not super common in grocery stores, so if you can't find it, don't try to sub regular basil, it's not the same. And last, but certainly not least, one of my favorite things to add at the end, some fried shallots. And you guys probably know it because I put it on top of practically everything in my other videos. Now, I want you guys to just take a minute, look at this B-roll, and tell me that this does not look gorgeous. Even if you don't like oxtail, your mouth has to be watering because this, I can smell it through the screen.
This smells so good. You know, when I was making this, you have to stew this for like 2-3 hours. I noticed that like my neighbors who walk their dogs by our window, they'd like slow down because I had the windows all open, and this stuff made the house smell so stinking good. It was ridiculous. I can't even talk to you right now. I need to eat it. Let me mix everything together. Little herb, little meat, little rice. Wow. I'm speechless. The oxtail has just this awesome depth of flavor, and it's like really deep but not too gamey. I would literally put this broth in a mug and just sip it all day long. Okay, if you like my video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to moi so that way we can cook together soon, and yeah, drop a comment on your feelings on my oxtail soup and on how you feel about what you want me to make next time. Honestly, like 99% of the things I make is stuff that you guys want me to make. So like I threw this on my story like, hey, would you guys be interested in this? And everyone was like, hells yeah. So anyway, talk to me. I love hearing from you guys. And yeah, leave me alone. I'm gonna eat this. All right, bye-bye.